Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into a truly wild study in musical storytelling today. We're going to deconstruct the incredibly dense 2025 discography of the artist brevenbell. Now, what we're looking at isn't just a random collection of songs or your average run-of-the-mill track list. No, this is a unified, narrative-driven study of musical ritual entirely told across 3 sequential releases. We're going to see exactly how an artist can use metadata, hyperspecific track titles, and evolving alter egos to craft a massive, overarching story of devotion. Okay, let's dive into this. Just take a look at this intense phrase, "Bear my cross, finna crucify me." This isn't just an edgy lyric, it's an actual track title from the second album of this sequence. It instantly establishes this undeniably heavy theme of profound personal sacrifice, right? The artist isn't just putting out music, they're signaling a deeply agonizing personal journey that anchors the entire artistic project.
And honestly, that brings us to the core tension of this entire explainer. I want you to really keep this question in the back of your mind as we move through the material. Are we witnessing pure religious devotion here, or is it something far darker? Because what brevenbell is doing across these records is setting up a massive dialectic clash. On one side, you have traditional holy surrender, and on the exact opposite side, explicit occult rebellion.
So, here's the roadmap for this 3-part ritual. Stage 1 is the album Forgiveness for St. Breven. Stage 2 is 𝔟𝔯𝔢𝔫𝔢, which we'll unpack in a bit. And Stage 3 finally culminates in an album simply titled Ritual. It's a clear, logical evolution of this persona. Section 1. The Myth of St. Breven. We're starting at the very beginning of this journey. Right out of the gate, brevenbell adopts a super specific saintly identity. And, the moniker St. Breven is definitely no accident. It frames the artist's work as a pious act. They're taking on this intense persona of holy agony, literally demanding forgiveness through their art. The album is literally called Forgiveness for St. Breven. It sets a deeply traditional, reverent stage for the absolute chaos that follows. Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer depth of the religious metadata embedded in this first album. For instance, the track Love My Jesus is explicitly tagged with St. Paul, God's Son, and Nazareth. Another track, 365 Holy Pious Son, tags Yeshua Bell, Mary Mother of God, and even the famous Catholic mystic Padre Pio. These deep Orthodox and Catholic roots are coded straight into the digital DNA of the music, anchoring us in a very traditional sense of sainthood. Managing this many complex theological alter egos sounds, quite frankly, exhausting, but it builds a rock-solid foundation of devotion. Section 2. Religion collides with the occult. This is where things take a major turn and shift to the antithesis. The traditional devotion we just talked about, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Instead, it meets stark, intentional friction by colliding head-on with something deeply rebellious and esoteric. On one hand, we've got the traditional holy imagery we just discussed, Yeshua Bell, Padre Pio, Mary. But on the other hand, hiding just beneath the surface in the metadata of the exact same records, we find highly specific occult imagery. We're talking tags for the occultist Aleister Crowley, the esoteric number 777, and even Baphomet. It's fascinating to watch the artist intentionally smash these completely opposing ideologies together in the same sonic space. To understand how on earth brevenbell justifies bridging this holy and unholy gap, we need to look at a crucial recurring tag, abraxas. This is a mystic, Gnostic term representing a supreme being that encompasses both absolute good and absolute evil simultaneously. By weaving the concept of abraxas throughout the chaotic lore of these track lists, the artist basically hands us a skeleton key to the whole project. It's telling us that the light and the dark aren't just fighting, they're actually 2 sides of the exact same coin, which, let's be real, is a pretty heavy concept for a pop track list. Section 3. The Weight of the Cross. This brings us to the crux of our journey. The second release acts as this intense bridge between the traditional Catholic world and the occult world through overlapping themes of bearing a heavy burden. The title of this second album is Thine Art, Music, Kari. That Greek word right there translates to grace. So the entire album literally means an exploration of grace. It grounds us right back into the theological framework of the work. The saint persona is seeking grace, but the journey to get there, it's incredibly painful. So let's look at how this pain is actually expressed. If we trace these recurring motifs of sacrifice, we see the words surrender and holy agony from the first album evolve into concepts of healing, being bare, and ultimately crucifixion in the second album. These specific words form the somatic backbone of personal sacrifice and extreme vulnerability that the St. Brevin persona is constantly communicating to us. Check out this quote from the second album's track list. "And I need grace, Mary Marie." Notice how it's typed out? It's frantic, it's broken up with symbols and erratic spacing. It brilliantly showcases the agonizing tone of this bare and healing persona. The artist is desperately reaching out for traditional salvation, literally crying out to religious figures for grace right in the middle of their own self-imposed musical crucifixion. Section 4, Culmination in Musical Ritual. And this brilliantly illustrates our transition into the final synthesis, the third and final release, simply titled Ritual. This is where all those opposing forces we've been tracking, the holy saints and the occult rebels, finally merge into a singular, overwhelming act of devotion. Look at how explicit this mashup becomes. The track Crucifixion 333 pairs occult 2-2 magic directly side by side with Jesus Christ. The track Lulu Spells pairs the demonic figure of Baphomet with Irene Mary Calendo, and Do What I Willed pairs Aleister Crowley's core philosophy right next to Saint Bryden of Brighton. They're existing in the exact same space, no longer in friction, but totally unified. This synthesis peaks perfectly with the track Love is Law, Underwill. This is a massive, direct nod to the occultist Aleister Crowley's religion of 𝔤𝔢𝔢, where the core rule is love is the law, love under will. But who is it performed by according to the album's metadata? Saint Brevin of Nazareth. The artist has completely 100% synthesized the occult law of 𝔤𝔢𝔢 with the identity of a biblical saint. The holy and the unholy have become entirely inseparable. Section 5. The meaning of true devotion. So, what does this all mean? Let's bring this explainer to its thematic conclusion and summarize what this incredibly complex journey actually reveals. Just read this final track title from the third album, St. Brevin's Pious Offering / Distance, Flaws plus Possession. Notice how the phrasing works here? A pious offering, which is the ultimate act of holy devotion, is presented in the exact same breath as esoteric possession. They are finally presented as one and the same. It represents the ultimate complete sacrifice of the artist to their craft. They're viewing the act of making music as a ritual that consumes them entirely, both holy and unholy. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the complete ritual we've unpacked today. Stage 1 was all about seeking forgiveness and establishing the myth of the suffering saint. Stage 2 was about bearing the cross, asking for grace, and exposing the painful vulnerability of the artist. And Stage 3 was the magic synthesis, where Christian devotion and occult philosophy merged into one cohesive musical ritual. When you lay it out like this, the conceptual scope of these 3 sequential releases is just massive. It is literally a masterclass in using every single part of a digital release to tell a story. Which leaves us with one final thought to reflect on. As we witness this elaborate 3-part display of agony, grace, and esoteric synthesis, we kind of have to ask ourselves, in the Church of Brevenbell, are we merely listeners or are we worshipers? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into musical storytelling. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.